Welcome to Discover Indie Film. I'm your host, Jeff Howard, and I've got filmmaker Oliver Scott with me. Hey, Oliver.
Good afternoon.
I got a lot to say about you right off the bat because you made what you always submitted as a music video. We always showed The Sword That Waits as a music video in the music video category. It was actually in Film Invasion Los Angeles in last June 2021, and won the award for exceptional filmmaking. And I gotta say, I think I probably sent you an email asking if you wanted to step out of the music video category and into the art house experimental short category. Because I don't know, I feel like it's a work of art. Like,
I appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know what to call it all the time.
yeah, I think and then thankfully you submitted it to the Sherman Oaks Film Festival, and in 2021 we got back into the theaters because of course last June was a virtual festival. So I do have kind of glad that we had a screening where your film got to be, I'm going to call it a film, not a music video.
Thank you.
But it got to be on a 25-foot screen, and I mean, it is a visual experience. It's just, I think it's delightful. It's funny because, I mean, I know we'll discuss it at some point, and it'll come up. It's about some pretty dark, serious themes, but I also think there's just a beauty to it that I just really enjoy looking at it. So
thank you very much. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to show it on a big screen. That was the biggest I had seen it up until then.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, I also want to add, I'm proud to say that you've been kind enough to make it a part of the Discover Indie Film TV series.
That's right.
That's right. So this podcast is going to get released after season 5, but if someone wants to see this amazing film, just go to Prime Video and search for Discover Indie Film. By the way, like Oliver just said, it was nice to see it on a big screen. Like, don't watch it on your phone. Maybe you're going to watch it on your phone, but if you're going to watch the series on Prime Video, it's an anthology of short films from the festival circuit. It'd be nicer if you had a big TV than a phone. But anyhow, go to Prime Video, search for Discover Indie Film, and The Sword That Waits is in season 5, episode 8, actually. But maybe just watch all of season 5 because there's some amazing stuff. A lot of art house, a lot of some animation.
Is that Phases movie in there?
Phases is not yet.
Okay.
Wasn't Phases great?
Yeah, I really liked that. That one stuck with me. I want to see that one again.
I don't know if you got to see it. Yeah, on the animation front, there's this amazing animation called The Cat, animated in black and white, and takes place in Tehran, made by artists from around the world. Anyhow, it's a good season, and there's lots of cool. I think we're allowed to curse. There's some really cool shit in there.
Great.
But I always use this podcast as I've gotten to do some Q&As with Oliver. But when you do a Q&A, you're just talking about the film itself. So, I mean, you're this amazing artist. You did the music, you did the animation. You shot, I know that you even, did the principal photography. So I want to know your life history, actually. Go back as early as you want. When did you first get interested in the visual arts?
Grew up in a visual arts family. Both of my parents are to some degree involved as artists. My dad is a painter, so I've been around art and painting and the teaching of art and painting as long as I can remember. I started drawing as a kid, so drawing and illustration was kind of my first visually creative practice.
And where'd you grow up?
So I mostly grew up in the desert between New Mexico and Arizona. So lots of nature and lots of stark nature. Nature is a beautiful thing, but also what's the word? Like an indifferent, possibly inhospitable, or it may have nothing to do with humanity.
Yeah. It's actually desolate and beautiful.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. Like, so growing up so let's say we're talking about Tucson, where I spent a bunch of time just going out into the country, out into the desert is, I mean, forgive me for being kind of dramatic, but I assume there's an audience that is not so familiar with the desert, but like it's potentially lethal. Like it's kind of not so different from living on the moon. Like you have to bring a portable atmosphere with you wherever you go, and you're kind of scurrying from shadow to shadow like a scorpion. And if you are outside too long, you might die. Like that's just the world you live in, and it's only unnatural means and privilege and kind of like weird stuff that keeps you away from that. Like if you're wealthy, I guess you spend your whole life in air-conditioned environments and you never think about how wrong it is that we even live there, all that kind of stuff. But if you are hustling or don't have that much money and like you're really hot and like you're thinking to yourself, why are we here? And you're questioning capitalism. Like, why are there Americans here? And you're like, oh, we stole the land. And then you start going down that whole trip of like, why are we here? We shouldn't be here. So I feel like where I grew up directly influences the themes of this movie.
For sure. And maybe most of your work?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm aware that oddly enough, the desert, there might be a redneck element in the desert, but there's actually a lot of major artistic communities.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why we have Santa Fe is because it was started as a quote unquote artist colony for rich white people, but it was initially started as a place where artists can go, and there's a big arts community in Tucson. It's funny to say the word redneck because there's all these flavors of conservatism that are out there, and like people actually have sunburnt necks out there, so it's almost applies more than it would in Virginia or something, where it's like at least you could tie it to a labor movement in Virginia. Red bandanas thing. Sorry.
Yeah, I threw an epithet out too, which I wasn't, but I was just meaning that there's a non-artistic, like almost a virulently non-artistic vibe to some of desert culture, but then I know there's all these enclaves of.
I mean, there's bubbles, but I would say like the predominant environment is bottom of this country in a way. Like I did my best to get out of there. So, nothing against anyone that lives there. I still have a lot of friends that live there, and I'm not speaking bad about the people that choose to live there. But like I personally couldn't stand the politics and that type of stuff. I mean, I'm focusing on just the bad. That's I recognize that's what I'm doing. So, and it's essentially a horror movie that I made. So like, not necessarily talking about how to live a psychologically balanced life. I'm talking about like the yell that you are doing when you're making a horror movie. You know what I mean? It's like, it's.
Yeah. Well, and The Sword That Waits, I mean, you shot at an abandoned middle school.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's about the horrors of American schooling, right?
Yeah, it is. I believe it's Hutchins Middle School in Detroit, and there's a separate conversation to be had about the exploitation of the infrastructure that we've abandoned. Maybe we'll get to that, but yeah, it was kind of about how in school.
Yeah, and your school experience was in Arizona.
My school experience was in Arizona. It wasn't good, I only made it through because of these kind of alternatives, these kind of like. There's different kinds of school other than like your straight public high school, these kind of schools for people that are either too fast or too slow, or couldn't otherwise hack normal high school. So you could. I don't know. That's what it took for me.
Yeah.
Like I was basically a dropout. Like I couldn't handle it. Had to get a degree, and I ended up getting a degree, but I just couldn't do it the normal way. It's too weird. I'm trying to communicate in this video basically the obsolescence of what you're taught, and the kind of like the shabby state of the infrastructure, and lies in textbooks, to say nothing of the present day dangers.
For sure. Yeah. You do put a lot of that in. But wait, back to your story. So, at what point do you get out of there?
Basically, I went to college late to learn like digital art and visual effects and motion graphics and like that. And I came out to California to work because this is where the jobs are. Again, it's like we're like tied to capitalism. I like the culture out here. I like the cosmopolitan nature. I like the diversity. I like a lot of what's endemic to California. I've been in the shadow of LA. Like growing up in Tucson, it's very much like a New Jersey, New York kind of thing. So
Tucson, there's a an LA sucks sort of vibe floating around.
Definitely like LA sucks, but also like that's the big city, and like music culture, like we're more influenced by the West Coast than let's say the East Coast or whatever. So I disliked where I was from when I was growing up. I didn't like where I was from. I didn't like it. So I would like self-consciously take on the affectations of places that weren't where I was from. So I was like very visibly listening to East Coast rap when West Coast rap was what you were supposed to do. And music from London and stuff. And I was very much like, I don't want to represent this place. I don't know. I'm a lot more comfortable with it now. I've kind of softened a lot of those views. But at the time, I was very much just like, I hate it here. I want to run away. This seems so hostile to like.
Which is that's a fairly universal.
I think so.
Adult feeling during adolescence.
I think a lot of people want to, get out of their small town, or, like feel like they can't, make it big in movies or music in their small town, or, and a lot of people think that that's what they want to do. They think that because they love music and movies that they want to make music and movies, because no one really is educated on what it's like to be in those industries. Just kind of show them the delightful result at the end. And having worked in behind the scenes, that it's a lot of work and a lot of it's work. So
yeah, there's it certainly looks glamorous from the outside.
Yeah, it's the toy is one thing, and then the 7 years it took to design the toy and have your sculptures thrown away or whatever. It is a kind of a lesson about how. Sorry to bring it back to capitalism, but it's kind of a lesson on how all that works. Now we're just in love with the end product and kind of normalizing the bizarreness of what it takes to make that.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting discussion I'm happy to have with you once we get through your story.
Yeah.
Because
sorry, I keep me
because particularly in our nation, well, I'll bring it up later, but like support for the arts in a capitalist society with a weaker social awareness and safety net. Like, you know, when you hear filmmakers in other, like we have films from Belgium, really cool films from Belgium that we showed last November. And like, you know, in the credits of the film, it says like, you know, Flemish Film Society supported, like you know, the like government support for the arts exists. And here, like we have the NEA, but it's
nothing.
a drop.
It's really nothing. Yeah.
It's and it certainly doesn't affect artists who aren't already connected and
I mean, who gets an NEA grant? Right.
No, it's ridiculous. We're never gonna have a film that had any kind of public support.
Matthew Barney is the only. I mean, maybe, you know, like, but yeah, I can't even name some. Maybe Andres Serrano, maybe, but who knows who Andres Serrano is? For not a lot of people.
Yeah, no, it's not. You know, it's just not a factor here. Yeah, so anyhow, and by the way, Tucson is a cool town, right? I know. I mean, in some ways,
it's got
the only thing I know about it.
It's got a university. It's got a big, Center for Creative Photography. It's like a big. I don't know if you're into photography. I guess it's
there's isn't there a light pollution ordinance? Like
I think so.
No street lights at night so that you can see the sky.
I mean, there's definitely street lights, but they have an observatory, Kitt Peak. You know, it's good in general for astrological observation because in the city there's definitely street lights
for sure. I'm kind of showing off my ignorance, but anyhow.
No, but they're into you know, nature related stuff out there for sure.
For sure. So you and did you go when you got your degree in, and I think you said animation and
it was visual effects and motion graphics.
Visual effects and motion graphics.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that?
In Phoenix.
In Phoenix, gotcha.
At one of these.
And then
so reputable.
And then you headed out to LA after getting that done.
Yeah. And most of the work is in. It's mostly related to advertising, but.
So you came out to LA and actually got started as a visual effects and animator.
Like doing design and animation, mostly motion graphics related. Just because of my particular skill set is mostly, like I said, having to do with marketing. But a lot of these people will also work in, I don't know, video games and movies, and marketing applies to everything. You know.
Marketing applies to everything.
I mean, it's the giant, like, fabric of fake economy. You know, it's like we all have to keep working, you know, and so we all, like, work on these quote-unquote important, not at all important, you know, projects, like whatever brand doing whatever commercials, you know. I don't know if anyone really thinks that they're doing anything important, but you try to do your job well and get a paycheck, you know, because like we haven't figured that part of it out. So like everyone has to keep working. I don't know how much my job has to do with my art. I don't know. I mean, telling stories is something that
it's interesting because as an artist or technical artist, like you're applying the same skill set to your work and your creative side, but it must feel completely different because in one case you're being like, okay, back there was actually a time when I was paid to be a screenwriter, and I would joke with friends because people thought that was so fancy.
Catch that. Could you try again?
People thought that was fancy, and I'd say, no, it's like being a plumber. Like, I go into a room and people tell me we want to put a toilet in the middle of the living room, and as the plumber, I say, well, you know, you're better off putting that toilet in the bathroom, and they go, no, we want it in the living room, and your job is to do what you're told. Like,
well, if you consider your job to do what you're told, then you have this separation mechanism, you know.
Yeah, but like even though writing seems like a creative art, in the industry, it's not.
It requires the ability to be creative, but it doesn't require you to be creative. You know,
yes, you have to create someone else's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, which is why I assume you really. How frequently are you creating your own work on the side?
Right. I mean,
All the time?
I try to do it as much as possible. You know, like I kind of see this job as a way to fund the other stuff.
And does it hone skills sometimes?
Oh yeah, like animation programs, or I've had to learn a lot about editing because I had to edit my own stuff. So I had to learn a bit about directing because I had to direct a thing. I mean, there's also directing commercials is different from directing music videos, which is different from directing features, right? I understand all these things are different. I'm not saying, directing one is the same as directing another, but like animation prepares you for directing because animation is kind of like directing in miniature, right? You have to make all the same decisions about storytelling and the visual part of film storytelling, but you're just doing it in a bonsai scale instead of like a human scale. So there's a little bit of practice that I got directing from animation. But yeah, it definitely, like anything having to do with like the animation software or like 3D stuff definitely comes from work, and the ability to direct 3D artists definitely comes from work. The ability to, try and tell a story in as quick amount of time, that definitely is like a commercial way of thinking, film way of thinking. I don't know if it works. Like, I don't know if people look at the music videos like with the kind of scrutiny that they're built to withstand, like they're built to withstand, like 10, 20, 30, 40 viewings or whatever. But no one does that. Like, I understand that. So maybe it's almost like overtraining, or like the ability to take an art project and turn it into a work project definitely comes from work. Is that good? Is that bad? I'm not sure. It could be both good and bad to be able to take, something that's like lively and spontaneous and vital and turn it into schedules and projects and pre-visualizations, and they're almost like contradictory methodologies. Like one is kind of anti-creative and the other is like pro-creative. Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Kind of.
For sure. Well, and it's funny because you made me think, but I mean, I think that's a reality with all creativity, that there's a lot of discipline necessary. And, I was in Spain at, an amazing museum. The Reina Sofia in Madrid has Picasso's Guernica, and then the whole room around it is all the work he did previous, like all the design, what do you call, but like the first drafts and this and that, and he was experimenting with this and like it,
sketches,
like creating the schedule, doing the pieces, like it was, the artistic process is never just, hey, I'm going to make something beautiful, boom, I've done it. Like it's actually takes a lot of careful planning, the discipline, and work.
Indeed. A lot of my job involves like teaching yourself how to do something, like some new plugin or some new software or some methodology or something. So staying flexible is good. Staying flexible, trying to learn things. Trying to be open to technology while still being pretty fixated on the kind of 90s mindset, but try to be open to new ways of production, like these tiny little cameras or adding 3D to stuff.
Yeah.
I worked with a 3D artist for maybe 60 to 70% of those shots, and then I had to kind of produce some of them myself. I don't know. They feel kind of like low in sophistication level to me, but I guess if they work, they work.
Yeah, well, so as far as your story goes, you're coming out here and you're doing the job. Which, by the way, congrats! Not everyone gets in and gets work.
That's true.
So
definitely seen some people flame out.
For sure. Some people have the skills, but not the discipline and not the temperament.
I've also seen like artists who are artists also not be able to differentiate their ego from their work, or like want to be thought of as an important person on the job and want to be communicating their ideas and expressing themselves, and those guys are always unhappy and always bumping up against the commercial realities, which is like, that's not why you're here.
Ego's a killer, man. Ego gets in the way of so much.
It makes doing emotional work really hard. Like I always make the analogy of like a state's military versus like private military. I don't know why, but like killing should be hard, right? But if you were taught how to do it as a job, then eventually it would just become a job to you. But I sort of feel like all the creative stuff we do out here, like we're really giving of ourselves. At least that's what it feels like to me. So like to be able to turn that off, is that good that we can be able to turn that off? I don't know. Like I'm not sure if it's good to be able to just like
do you feel there's a mercenary vibe to it?
Yeah, and I don't want to overstate the importance of advertising or belittle like what actual military operators do or whatever, but it's been like my only way to make sense of it myself was like, how do I just take money from someone and then just do whatever they say, in like this kind of Bushido kind of thing. So it does feel kind of mercenary because like I said before, it takes a creative person, and you have to be able to be creative, but it's not necessarily going to be your creation. So like you have to be able to like bring all your skills to bear, except that 5% of you that's really connected in your heart. Or like you have to be able to fake that somehow, or like kind of be able to turn on and off like a headless version of how you're going to execute that. Yeah, it feels very mercenary, and I'm not a supporter of war. Like it doesn't feel good to be fighting in a war. Sometimes I feel like a propagandist or whatever.
Yeah. No, I think you nailed it. What a lot of people struggle with is you have to be creative, and it's not your creation. So, yeah, that's a feeling that people have a really hard time with.
Making me feel like a forger, kind of, or like a counterfeit artist or something. It's like,
yeah, and yet I would argue, I don't know, maybe because all the idealism has been beaten out of me over the 50 plus years I've been around, but I kind of respect people who can separate the two and say like, I can use my creative skills in this mercenary manner, and then I can turn around and then you can create on the side just for you, but to not be so precious about it, I think might be healthy.
It's the only way I can keep doing this work is by having that wall around the ego, because yeah, I mean, it doesn't, like, I don't know how to explain it, but it doesn't really touch my ego. Like, it could be this brand or this other brand, and here's the ultimate mercenary thing. It's like, it pays this thing, ultimately. Like, so whether I'm working for this brand or this other brand, it's kind of like, it's since they both pay the same, like they should both get equal amount of my attention and in my work, which is to say they're both kind of equally important and they're both equally unimportant because my job is the same.
Yeah, interesting. All right, so as far as your side projects go, because that's obviously my and everyone listening's biggest interest.
I mean,
in a way, is are you always like? Is the sword that waits? Like, it's a music video, but I know we've talked about it. I think we talked about it in the Q&A, even on stage, where you compose the music to the visuals, not because normally a music video, right, is
the other way around.
Visuals complementing, a song.
In this particular case, it was kind of like making them both at the same time,
which is actually becoming more common. A lot of musicians are exploring the visual arts, and now I'm meeting lots of people who are like working on the visual and the audio and the music at the same time. It's a fascinating time because now the tools are there for most people. Yeah,
it's so easy. It's certainly easy to document the process of making something, right? And it's certain, we've got the stuff in our pockets. The reason why I did that was probably stemmed from like a desire I had to make a video or have a video for my own music. Like I really wanted to have something where I made all the decisions. In this case, it started from a pile of footage that I had. One thing that I learned learned this from a DVD commentary, but it's like film school type lesson, which is to start from what you already have, right, and specifically to write a script around the location, which is what I think it was James Wan and the other guy that did Saw. Not that I love Saw so much, but the way they made it was pretty interesting. That they had this location first and kind of wrote the story around the location, kind of like a play. So I happened to have this pile of footage, which was kind of a random, not necessarily an accident, but I'm just kind of a compulsive footage collector. Like I'm kind of always documenting stuff. And I was in Detroit for another reason, and I'd really just kind of gone through and just taken this footage, not knowing what I was going to do with it. Just seemed like an opportunity for the future. And so then later, I was like, whoa, what schools, what do I got about, like, what's interesting about schools? And I'd come across this visual technique of just putting something that doesn't belong there in a place and having that juxtaposition be a kind of tense, or like that there's a kind of tension in something just being where it shouldn't be, which I had done on a previous music videos. I don't know if you saw this stuff, but like the missiles in the desert, all that stuff. So I was like, well, what doesn't belong in the school, And I was like, well, the way I felt about school, is like kind of a violent clash. And like, what if I tried to illustrate, like, because this school looks kind of like how I felt about school, like blasted, and who knows what time period it's actually from, and this kind of Tim Burton kind of thing of like, this looks very old, but it's only been abandoned for like 14 years. And, I started thinking about the dangers that you would find in high school, dangers to your mind, dangers to your body, and then kind of hinting at some much bigger ideas about like colonialism and like kind of encoded white supremacy of the Eurocentric classicism and stuff, like all that British Museum type imagery. I was also
Right, so that's why you were pulling in images that look like they're from other cultures.
and well, like showing those artifacts in, like, it's kind of like a satire of the British Museum. Like, what's the British Museum? It's like just theft, just like I'll just disarticulate your great nation's history and just steal it and show it to white people, devoid of paint, life, and context, and we're going to display it as bleached bones and, like all that.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. It is an amazing turn that we've managed to take being honest about museums, and particularly that one, because that is the museum of colonialism. But up until the awareness hit, right, we just kind of saw it as, wow, this is an amazing place to see things from around the world. Like there was an element of respect for other cultures and their art and value to it. But then when you learn it was stolen, it wasn't like the Greeks said, here's something that we'd like to, there's museums where everything is gifted, and this is a museum where everything is stolen. And there's museums, I think there's something, I'm actually a fan of the Broad Museum downtown here. And, that was, their billions came from something pretty horrible, but it was just, the suburbanization of America. So they built everyone's shitty little house. Mm-hmm. And, but then the artists loved them because they actually used that money, and they became friends with Basquiat and all these amazing artists and supported them financially and bought their works. And now they're just showing all the works that, there's like a respect for the art. But yeah, the British Museum really is just like,
they're both, the Broads are more nakedly trying to launder their reputation. Like, that's kind of like the purpose of putting your name on a wing of something, right?
For sure.
Like the rehab center brought to you by the Sacklers. You know what I mean? Like that kind of, it's that kind of move.
Yeah, that one's even bad. That's pretty much the worst.
But isn't that kind of what the British Museum is? I mean, it's more nakedly just like,
it wasn't.
Well, the world is ours, and,
it was ego,
look at all the cool
ego.
shit that we own now.
Yeah, there's no reason for this to stay in India, and this to stay in Turkey, and this to stay in Greece, and this to stay in Egypt because we're more important. We're just taking it. It's ours. If we see it, it's ours.
The lesson, though, is the last part, though. The lesson is just, it's ours. Just like tea is ours, just like curry is ours, just like, like all these things. Ours, talking about the British Empire, not ours, but, all these things that don't belong to them at all, that they feel like is theirs, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
I went as a kid. I went to the British Museum as a kid. They kind of refer to the acquisition process kind of obliquely, and there's no way to frame it that's not just like it's even in pieces, because I had to break it into pieces to transport it, and like they talk about why it's in these pieces, and they show pictures of it, and the whole time you're saying like, you just took it, you just took it. And then there's the weird, I don't know, there's all kinds of weird racial stuff with the Brits and Egypt. I don't know.
Well, everywhere.
Oh boy.
It's that's a big topic.
Yeah, and I'm not explicitly getting after that stuff in my thing, other than like there's a thing about pulling down, I don't know if this makes it across, because I'm trying to fit a whole topping into one shot, so, or two shots. So there's a shot with a defaced Civil War monument that's like been defaced and partially destroyed, and and that's pretty obvious. That's pretty obvious. I'm trying to say there, but I'm not getting into race stuff as specifically in that video. More just like the bigger things of just like you're lied to, and you're not safe, and isn't this shit scary, and why did you bring me here? You know, like it's not safe. You know, like this is supposed to be where we're raised and nurtured and built, you know, to be productive citizens and stuff. So
and taught. I mean, you're sharing that we're lied to. And hell, current events, there's people trying to pass legislation in parts of this country saying, how dare you not lie? We have to keep lying. Like, don't you dare. We do not want like honest history.
CRT stuff. Or
the
stuff that he's afraid of, CRT, that isn't actually CRT.
Well, they label something, they call it critical race theory, but it's actually just accurate history that is not
right.
If it lacks a white bias, then it's unfair.
And their way of condemning it is to call it racist.
Yes.
Just to disappear up its own Nautilus shell.
Yeah.
You know. It's real. It's real confusing.
The country hosts a culture war for the last whatever. I guess it's all history.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're just kind of, you know, I don't know. All the euphemisms are kind of drying up in the sun. I think. It
is an interesting topic, right? Because this is I'm doing quote fingers, melting pot. But there actually is not all immigration here was forced. So this is a multicultural society that is somewhat unique. I mean, there's lots of multicultural centers around the world, but, you know, I have a friend from Lithuania, and, like, the definition of Lithuania is, like, a nation for Lithuanians. Like, you know, like...
Yeah, the French
Romania
deal with this all the time.
Is for Romanians. Yeah, there's...
Who's French, right? Well, it's like they deal with their own colonial stuff and racism stuff too. Or,
I mean, Deutschland, that's the land for the Deutsch people. Like there's this, and then America is actually...
What is America?
Depending on who you talk to, some people are like, America is a white Christian nation based on patriarchs. So that's their definition of it. And then if we define it as a secular, multicultural, multiracial society, all of a sudden those two viewpoints they don't completely opposite.
Yeah.
But like here in California, so I feel a bit fortunate growing up in Los Angeles because my entire life in a suburb of LA that's pretty close to downtown, there was never a time in my life where all my friends were one identity, one race, one culture. So, you know, it just felt normal that, you know, at David's house it was Korean food, and at Sujay's house it was Indian food, and at Sergio's house was Mexican food, and it was like, hey, we're just together, like we're all just friends, because, you know, LA public schools were pretty integrated,
right,
because LA didn't. Oh man, it was a shock for me when I first went to the South and I found out that there are lines in the city where north of that street it's one race and south of the street it's another. Like
redlining.
Yeah.
Redlining.
I mean, I know we did have it here, but it was less so. I think.
You've seen that? I think it's called Crips and Bloods Made in America. A really good documentary. That's not just about Crips and Bloods, but it's probably, I would say, essential for anyone that just lives in the city, because it's a lot about like the structure of the city and how the specific choice to put a freeway in this one particular corridor, which is 100% purposeful, you know, definitely does divide the city into sectors, and like that there's this kind of, I don't know, like dishonest kind of, like it's just segregation by newer names, kind of like more subtle
Yeah.
names for segregation, but ultimately it's this, unfair distribution of resources, and like we believe the lies that we tell ourselves. Like growing up in Tucson, they tell you it's not a segregated city, so you think it's not, and you walk around thinking that the people you see are the people that live in your city, but really you're not seeing everyone that lives in your city because people aren't mixing, because neighborhoods are structured and redlined. And like I remember not really knowing Tucson until I started working at the video store, and basically having a random statistical sampling of the actual population of the city, because they were who were coming in. And I remember like the first time I saw, all the, forgive my poor pronunciation, but all the Nguyen's in Tucson, of which there are many. It turns out there's a very large Vietnamese population in Tucson, pretty segregated, and not, at least in the time, in the 90s, wasn't as much like traffic in outside of like certain places like video stores. Do you know what I mean? Like people weren't like mixing. I was like, this is a different city than what they told me I lived in, and I don't like that feeling of getting lied to. Like we sort of feel like I know what's up, I know what's going on, and then you find out that you could be part of, I don't know what, that they could be lying to you, and you could be believing the lie or something like what.
And growing up in the 90s, like at school, like there wasn't a racial mix?
There was. In fact, you're kind of told that we're in a post-racial America, so like you're sort of like,
right. So because Tucson identifies as a liberal town, there's sort of that sort of pushed.
I'd say that like it's a city that's like it's just in denial, or was in denial about what it was, because it would tell you, oh, we're there's lots of Native Americans and Mexican folks around. See, it's diverse. See, but like,
so it's that attitude of, and I'm using the voice of the mayor, the white male mayor. I'm imagining in my head says, everybody's happy in their neighborhoods. The Vietnamese are happy just living in the Vietnamese neighborhood, and the Latinx, or he probably was, and the Mexicans like their neighbor, like the reason,
or like talked about, like they would talk about, and they would use the word Latino, but they would say like they would talk about the Latinos as a ethnic minority. It's like we are there, having stolen the land, and like having, I don't know, it's just not even like understanding. How people say like, oh, we don't live in a racist country, we elected a black president. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's a lot more to it than.
No one's ever made that statement if they weren't racist.
Right, or had just not thought about how the stuff works. Or yeah, I'm not saying I got the answers, but
No,
just that like there was more to it than we were ever told, and there's a lot of
for sure. Well, so those are the themes underlying Sword That Waits, but I'm going to shift back into interviewer mode. How frequently, like, how many music videos do you generally make? Music videos for your personal projects?
I've made a few. I'd like to make more. The last one took so much effort, basically, and like getting other people involved is kind of like the hardest part. And then we just had this funny couple of years where, I don't know, the the 3D artists that I knew were like at home doing their own stuff, kind of either taking care of their families or, you know, doing their own 3D projects. And the last couple of years, I've honestly been doing more music stuff. Working on what might be the next video, but it doesn't move at a quick pace. I don't know, these things they kind of like accrete. It's a question of like building up footage over time, of like kind of like collected documentary style footage.
Yeah, it sounds like you almost have a process like that I think works great because I love the results you get. But yeah, so it sounds like you spend time gathering and then see how everything you've gathered fits together into a new project.
When I've been making these videos for my own stuff, it has been like that. I did the first music video I did was for someone else, and there was more of like a plot and like a story to it, and that was an experience. You know, I if I was going to do that again, I don't know. I wouldn't want to do it just myself. That was a lot of work to do just myself. I don't know. It's hard to do these things just yourself. You need it like at least like an artist, or at least like one other person.
Right. You need a team to.
It would be nice. You know, it would be nice.
Yeah. I guess my question is, like, do you have a website somewhere, like, or a YouTube channel where you have like a couple pieces of work?
Yeah. I'm in like my like portfolio site, which has commercial work and music videos and stuff on there.
But like to my detriment, I haven't looked at it. Like I don't like. Are there more Sword That Waits things that are in the vein of the Sword That Waits?
There is another one up there called Snitch Visa. The website is oliverscottmotion.com. It's got a mix of music videos and commercial stuff and some design stuff. You can see Snitch Visa, which has a similar kind of juxtaposition kind of formula to it. I did there's like a little documentary short up there that I did that's kind of music video like. It's kind of like a music video approach to a memorial mural for this friend of ours. There's this rapper called Cadillac Ron. There's, you know, design stuff on there. There's some animation stuff on there. I think I'd like to hook up with an artist that I could work with more regularly. I could definitely make more of these quicker if I had, you know, if I could just turn to someone and say like, I need this asset by this time or whatever.
Right, like another digital artist, so you could not have to do every single thing yourself, because it's like you're building a house and you have to be the plumber and the architect, and the electrician
and the brick
carpenter, and the mason.
So like after a while, you start to move backwards. Like the more roles you give to yourself, instead of moving forwards, you're moving backwards. And you're like, oh, I have to make bricks. I have to make the mold that makes the bricks, and it can kind of disappear in itself. I've met a lot of the artists that I've worked with through work, but because now everyone's working at home, there isn't this constant collaborative pool that I used to have, because I used to be freelance and go into this studio, that studio, the other studio, you know, meet a group of people, meet another group of people, kind of take a tour through the freelance world. But now, like, everyone's at home, everyone's isolated, and I don't know. So it's been harder to find people to work with, to be honest.
Just because of COVID.
Yeah, and like everyone just being at home and like no one like mixing as much.
Yeah, it's tricky. Yeah, because we haven't solved that one during this 2 years. We haven't figured out how to
Keep the social aspect.
Zoom mixers just don't cut it.
Yeah, and I think people's appetite for that is almost like used up. Like, if you were doing Zoom happy hours before, you're probably not doing them now. You know, at least from what I've seen.
Well, a sample set of one is Film Invasion Los Angeles 2020. When we held a virtual Zoom mixer, we had like over 70 people, I think, during a 2-hour period. A total of 70 came and went, but like it was like, 40 to 50 to 60 at once, everyone chatting about their work, taking turns. It was really cool. And a year later, when we couldn't quite get into the theater in June of 2021, I was like, oh, I'll have another mixer and it'll be cool. And we held a Zoom mixer, and I think there was 5 people because everyone was burned out on Zoom.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, well, I think we're opening up again, so hopefully you'll start getting some face-to-face with other artists again and finding people to collaborate.
Yeah, I hope so. In case I didn't mention it before, like we were talking about making the music as well as the visuals at the same time. Like knowing that it was going to be about school. Sorry if I'm repeating anything I've said in a previous Q&A, but part of the reason why the music sounds like it does is because it's saying something about school too, and so I'm using these kind of marching band style drumline percussions, which I've always been a fan of, and that to me is like a conversation about being in lockstep, marching in time, and all that stuff, and like just marching to the drum and all that stuff, but also just because it sounds cool, and I'm kind of a hobbyist drummer, and I like to program drums, finger drum and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've shared my praise, so to speak, but yeah, the music is actually excellent. I mean, I know I tend to focus on the visual because film is a visual medium, but yeah, the fact that you're the composer on that, I mean, the music is great. Actually, that was a really nice thing about the theater is they actually finally have a decent sound system.
Yeah, it sounded good.
Yeah, it sounded really good. And I think some people even commented at the Q&A. Someone in the audience,
Matthew James, the composer guy? He's a local composer. Did the music for Gene. I think Matthew James is his name. Sorry, I'm not 100% on the name, but anyway, that guy was picking up on some of the influences.
Yeah, I think he named whatever. I'm not cool. I don't know. Was it like trip hop or something? What did he mention? I don't know. Anyhow, it was
I think he might have brought up
it was
Aphex
nice
Twin
that
or
the
something.
music was highlighted in that situation. Yeah, because the music is rad.
Thanks.
That dates me that I called it rad.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, it's kind of old and new sounding. It's got rhythms that are both kind of old and new.
Well, and it perfectly fits the visual. I mean, it is. I remember watching it before we ever spoke, and I always wondered, like, okay, either he found this amazing piece of music, or he had written this amazing piece of music, and then like somehow came up with the perfect visuals for it. But actually, it was sort of a mix of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they it's not that the music serves the visual or the visual serves the music. I mean, they are just the fabric of it. The fabric of the piece is they're just interwoven.
There's kind of a graph of like things you would kind of want from a music video, like a range of emotions you might want to feel, or the things that make you feel good have probably done this couple of range of moves. Or if, like, think of like things that you think are interesting in music videos, and then I'm trying to like just make sure that they happen. Like I know you're gonna need to go from quiet to loud, or I know I'm gonna need to, go from one theme, introduce a brand new other theme, and then come back to the theme that I introduced. And so knowing that I had those moves to make, I wanted to match those visually, or whatever. So like, I know I need to go from low energy to high, or right here, or something like that, and kind of.
And I mean, it must have taken you a really long time.
I guess it took the main edit was a few. The main edit is not the part that took so long. I'd say the part that took the longest was compositing. Honestly, it's like getting this
right. And for those who don't know, compositing is where you bring images together.
Compositing is the
like creating a visual composition in a way, right?
It is bringing together elements that were not previously together, bringing them together to create an illusion. So using methods, analog or digital or whatever, you're taking images like photography and other types of images such as graphics or computer-generated elements, and then you're kind of putting them together, marrying them, making them appear to be either in the same time and place or in the same emotional space. So total realism might not be the goal. It might be an emotional fit that I'm looking for, but the compositing is creating an illusion through bringing together elements that were not previously together.
Yeah, visual elements. Yeah.
So in this case, I've got a photographic element of what they call a plate, which basically means a background kind of stage that is behind something else. So there's like a plate, which is like the background, and then there'll be some kind of CG element that is, in this case, I have to do camera tracking, which means I'm creating a digital camera that is moving in the same way that the physical camera is moving. So when the digital camera, shows the picture of the CG camera or whatever, that's a bad example. Let's say CG statue or whatever. So my camera is moving a certain way, and then the pretend camera has to move in the exact same way, or the image will not appear to be inside that reality.
Yeah, which is so interesting. I'm sure I'm not even aware of that when you're doing it, but when you describe it, I know exactly what you're doing. Yeah, because you were walking down a hallway with a camera in that middle school, and then when you're superimposing, which might not be the right word, but when you're when you're superimposing that statue in there, in order for it to not just look like the same tracking motion has to be recreated digitally.
And the camera is moving however it moves. Doesn't matter how the camera's moving. Could be handheld, could be smooth, could be not moving at all. But an object in a space will be affected by ambient light, reflected light, maybe interactive light. There's characteristics of the lenses that you might be reproducing or recreating to make it seem real. Like I'm doing a lot of what would you call it? Like aging, essentially, to make this fairly crisp, pristine digital video look like it was shot on 16 millimeter or trashy 35 millimeter. So I'm like, and there's whatever characteristics of the lens. Is it out of focus? Is it in focus? Is part of it out of focus? So I'm recreating that stuff. What makes something look realistic is imperfection, right? So something comes out of a computer very perfect. So you have to make it dirty and a little bit out of focus and take on color characteristics of the environment and of the color of the film stock, rather. A lot of technical kind of boring stuff goes into like selling the magic trick.
Right. It's technical, boring stuff, but it actually is. It's kind of magical because
It's the expression
Lord
of
knows-
emotion, ultimately.
Yeah, and an audience can watch your film on a 25-foot screen and be aware of none of that because it is actually, it works. It's visually convincing. Our brains we feel like we're walking through that place and those images are there. Those objects are in the space, even though they don't belong. Like you said, it's juxtaposition.
Yeah. There's a bunch of like imagery kind of references that I don't know if you pick them up because they're kind of like flash frame type of images, but there's like blueprints of prisons. Like at one point for a job, I got into prison architecture, and turns out there's like only 3 types of prison architecture. That every prison is built to like one of these like 3 or 4
Like archetypes.
models.
Yeah.
And they all have to do with surveillance and control and all that stuff, and not so very different from like school architecture. So I'm drawing a little parallel between schools and prisons and all that stuff. Also, these blueprints just look like occult symbols themselves, and like there's architectural lines that look like Masonic symbols, but they're actually floor plans and stuff like that. There's circles and circuits, like like the endless circuit and like circles. So like that theme shows up over and over and over again in the video.
Yeah, and it's even if you don't catch it, it's all there.
Yeah.
It's all there. It's I mean, I am a fan of whether you call it music video, whether you call it short film, whether you just call it film, whether you call it cinema, I'm a fan when it's art. Like and I know I can never define it. There's sketch comedy is its own type of art too. When someone does a hilarious little 7-minute sketch on film. But, it's...
Comedy's hard. Comedy's might be the hardest.
Oh, it's the most underappreciated art form because, yeah, believe me, if I say it too often, but watching, 600-800 films per festival... comedy falls on its face way more often than anything else.
Comedy seems hard. I've tried. I wasn't able to do it. Like writing stand-up is really hard. Writing humor is really hard. I have so much respect for those that can do it.
Yeah, and the effort you put into your work. I mean, I've said it before. Something can be funny on the page. And it can be funny out of the person's mouth in front of the camera. And it can be funny when you watch that take. And then you edit together and it's not funny.
Oh, man.
Because the timing of the edit is just as important as the timing of the performance.
Absolutely.
It's whereas, not to shit on drama editors, but they don't have to be as good. Because if I'm crying over someone's grandmother dying, like, you're going to have to really fuck that edit up for me to lose the cry. But if I'm about to laugh and your timing's off, you've killed my laugh.
Yeah. I think comedy editing might be the most like participatory kinds of, I mean, I guess action editing is too. I guess the third.
Yeah, but action's obvious when it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, comedy should be obvious when it doesn't work, but I mean, whatever. You're talking to me in the midst of Film Invasion 2022, selection jury screenings, and I'm just like, there's like 5-10 so far that it breaks my heart that I can't reach out to this person and say, can you please cut this right? Because you got a really good thing here. It could be, I'd be laughing if you would just fix it. And that nobody wants that email. Nobody, that is an unwelcome thing.
Yeah, right. Like, who are you?
I think you're still muted. Yeah, who am I?
Right.
Who am I? I'm an expert, actually.
Right.
About an expert. Well, anyhow. All right, enough of me whining about my. Although last night I might, before you leave here, I might make you watch a music video we watched last night.
Sure. Yeah.
Animated, probably not by hand, but it has that by hand look.
I mean,
and
I don't need it to be
beautiful, trippy as fuck. So anyhow,
yeah.
I think we're want to wrap it up.
Sure.
And then we'll do your 4 questions. You mentioned OliverScottMotion.com.
Yeah. I mean, that's partially a professional work, so there might be some less interesting stuff up there, but there's also music videos and
if someone's listening and they you can reach out to Oliver that way and make sure you don't ask him to take less than his usual rate, because it's always sweet when people meet at the festivals and like, oh man, you can do that, will you do that for me? And then it's like, don't ask for a favor, man. People got to eat.
I know.
But I would be shocked if people didn't watch. If you're listening to this, thank you for listening, and you got to watch The Sword That Waits.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
Hop on and watch it. How could someone listen to this description of it and all that you brought to it and all the effort you put into it? And if they haven't seen it, they got to be motherfucking curious.
Yeah, I hope I haven't begun the bum out too early.
I don't think there's any bum out.
Good.
The people, and I don't even think we get the people who'd be mad about what we talked about. It was funny. At the last festival, there was one film written by and starring a young African-American woman, and there was a Trumper in the audience who started mouthing off, and that was different because we haven't had that. But
why did you come here, guy?
Yeah, it was actually the mom of an actress, a young actress, like a 12-year-old actress that was in another film, and her mom was out to support. Like during the film, she started saying, "I can't watch this," and all it was a black woman being mistreated at work, and she saw it as a big agenda. And then, of course, the woman sits down during the Q&A and goes, "This is close to documentary. This is like exactly what happened to me.
This happened to me yesterday."
Yeah, and it's like. And I just kind of addressed the woman in the audience with my virtue signaling older white male going, yeah, so if you were mouthing off during, I forget what I said, but I was basically like, you shouldn't judge something before you know where it comes from, because if you thought this was BS, it's not. Mm-hmm. This is her life. But anyhow. All right, so that's my way of getting off the subject of people should watch your film. Oliver Scott's film. I'm calling it a film, The Sword That Waits, although
Thanks for having me today.
Music video is a valid name, too.
Thank you very much for having me today.
And I am going to name the things that people should know before we run, which is the first thing I should ask is like and subscribe. Hate saying it, but it's true. If you like what you hear, if you're interested in people who are making films and music videos for themselves and sharing with the world, then this podcast is for you. So like and subscribe and give it 5 stars. If you want to learn more, discoverindiefilm.com is the website, and @DIFwins is the social media. Discover Indie Film, this podcast, gave birth to that TV series we talked about that The Sword That Waits is in. I was talking to filmmakers and the people who make features. Everyone told me they were on streaming, and none of the shorts were. And if they were, no one was seeing them. So we figured there's strength in numbers, and everyone brought their work together. And we're on season 5 of this experiment, this anthology of short films handpicked from the festival circuit. I think there's 24 in season 5, and they're all superb. So please go to Prime Video, and you have to buy it. We used to be free included with Prime, and then once we got up to like 10,000 viewers a week, Amazon was like, "Yeah, this is too much. You got to charge 99 cents for this per episode and $7.99 per season."
Oh, that's not so bad.
Not so bad. As another one of your fellow filmmakers who contributed to this season said, $8 for 24 films that were made out of people's own pockets and their own sweat and blood. That's not bad. That's not a big ask.
No, in fact, it seems criminal when you put it that way.
It's half a movie ticket, and you get it forever through the... because I don't think Amazon's going anywhere. So anyway, that's the story with the TV series. I really don't think Amazon is leaving us, but they might kick us off someday. Who knows? You know, we have nudity, but what are you going to do? They got lots of nudity on their shows. So that's the Discovery Indie Film Story. And I mentioned the 2 film festivals that The Sword That Waits was in, that it got some awards at. That was the Sherman Oaks Film Festival we hold every November. And you can learn about it at ShermanOaksFF.com, and it's at ShermanOaksFF on social media. And Film Invasion Los Angeles is every June, and that's FilmInvasionLA.com, and it's at FilmInvasionLA on social media. And it's coming up really damn soon. Apparently, it's March 8th today. We're recording this March 8th. It's not going to come out, I think, until later in April, because I have a lot of podcasts saved up. So thank you, Oliver, for coming over in person. And thank you, everyone, for listening.